Okay, let's continue with our game we're looking at, the coin game. And just as a reminder, we have our coins here. They come from a prefab. There's my prefab folder. So we first we created a coin. We did all the colors and so forth. We dragged that coin back and dropped it in a folder here, prefabs folder. And then by dragging it back, that made this prefab. And then we started, or an instance, sorry, made it an instance of a prefab. And then we started taking these and dropping them up here. And those are going to be instances of that prefab. Then we added a timer. We dropped on a empty game object here. And down here. We added an empty, and then we created a script for the timer. And we'll take a look at that here in a second. And let's see. Scripts. Now we also remember we had our coin script. So if I go to coin, just to refresh our memory.
Wasn't it whenever the player got close enough to touch it that it disappeared
Right.
and gave a counter?
Mm-hmm. So up here we, like I say, got our coin count. Here our game's over and we won. And like you said, if it triggers an on-trigger event, that's where you have that on-trigger set that causes a collision, or a collision causes on-trigger, I should say. And then it runs this bit of code. And this destroys that particular game object that this is a part of. So when we create an instance of that, each one of them is like running their own bit of code. You can almost think of it that way. And then this right here would destroy that particular object. Now our timer, yeah, maybe. Let's try it again. Okay. And remember our timer, we set it at 60 seconds to begin with, and then we're counting down. And then come down here, and if count is less than or equals 0, then it starts the game over. Okay, so that's where we're at. Now we want to handle the end of the game code.
Or when you succeed?
For when you succeed, when you grab all the coins. And this is located in Standard Assets Particle Systems. And prefabs. Again, the prefabs means that we can drag and drop these on here, and they're separate instances of this particular object. Now, just for fun, we could drag the afterburner up here, and that's an afterburner. Now, when I drag that up here, you see it's got an instance up here, so I can right-click on that and delete. Here's a dust storm. You see the dust going across. So you can get some really cool effects with these. What's that one? Dust Storm Mobile.
I think the mobile version, it like sticks to you or something.
It what?
I think the mobile dust storm may like stick to you, or it loads for phones better.
Yeah, I don't know. This is my first semester actually using the standard assets. I've played with assets before, but just not that specific one. Okay, here's explosion. Yeah. Looks like just a script. So some of these may have to actually program. And we'll see how to program it. Fireworks is one we're going to look at. So let me go to flare, see what that looks like. There's a flare. I'd almost think these is if you're designing for a cell phone. Don't see that doing much. Smoke. And again, there's a lot of settings that go along with these. If you come over here and look at these are all the different things that have programmed into this. Steam. Just what you'd expect, Steam. See, I don't even know how you do this without particles. The particle systems allows you to have a kind of a complex animation on your screen using particle systems. And there's a lot of math behind particles. We're not going to look at that. One more before we go to what we want. I wonder if this is a company from the UK or something. Look how they spelled tire. So I guess if you're trying to program a car leaving, you could use that. I'm guessing it's tire burnout off of a car. Okay. Anyway, we want fireworks. So there's our fireworks. It'll look actually a lot better than that in the game. Now we can click stop here to stop that. So if you don't want to have that running. Now, part of the problem is if I run it right now, my game, the fireworks will be going off all the time. It says you can add a second one, a third one if you want. Let's drop on another one. Drop fireworks there. Stop it. Drop on another fireworks. Stop that. And that's probably enough. So we got three fireworks on there. It says by default all the firework particle systems will play when the level begins. And it says you can test this by pressing play on the toolbar. We're not going to do that. To disable the playback on level startup, we select the particle system and then disable the play on awake. So I have this one selected, and I come over here, and here's our play on awake. So I uncheck that. Come over here, uncheck play on awake. Come over here, uncheck play on awake. I have no clue why those turn on at that point. But we stop those. There we go. Now we need to give these tags. We got 3 fireworks. So got this fireworks here. If I come over here, you see that there's a tag option. If I do the drop down there, I can choose add tag. And then I click this plus here. And they want us to call it, probably not that matters what the name is, fireworks. Now that's just creating a tag just generally. That hasn't assigned us to this yet. So if I come over here, this is still untagged. So I do the drop down, and I now see fireworks there. I'm going to click the next one. It's untagged, so I do the drop down, and I choose fireworks. And I choose the last one, and I do the drop down, and I choose fireworks. So we've assigned that fireworks tag to all three of them. Now we want to go back to our coin.cs. Which one? I don't know if that's the right one or not. Scripts. And coin. Now for our games over, this is where we want to modify this code. And we got game object timer equals game object dot find level timer. This just generically creates a new instance of for this timer. Or not creates a new instance. It finds the instance. Sorry. So it finds the instance. So I'm setting it. I got this name here, timer, and then it's going out and finding the level timer. Now we only have one empty in ours. It's this one right here, and this matches the name hits here. So if I had a different name right here, that should be whatever I have here. You can also find by tag, but you can also find by name. And again, this finds the instance of whatever is running and assigns it to this. Then at that point, we want to destroy the timer. Why do you think we'd want to destroy the timer?
So it doesn't tick down anymore.
And we can actually have our game.
Because otherwise, the timer will keep going, and then it'll reset your level. So you'll be in the middle of watching the fireworks start, and then all of a sudden the levels start over. So that's why we destroy a timer. Now we're going to have game object, and I put a beginning bracket, closing bracket, and I give it some kind of name. They say call it fireworks systems equals game object dot find game object, find game objects with tag, and I think I called it fireworks. Excuse me. Remember, we had a prefab of fireworks, and we went on and we dropped on 3 fireworks. These 3 right here. So when this runs, we got 3 instances of that prefab. We gave each one of them a tag of fireworks. We did that so we could reference it in the code here. This bracket you see here, this says we're creating an array of game objects. We're calling it fireworks systems, and I'm going through and I'm doing a find game objects. So we're finding multiple ones with this tag. So it'll go out and find everything with this tag and assign it to this array. Then I'm going to have for each game object and they say use Go in the firework systems. Go.get component. And I'll talk about what each one of these is doing. Particle system dot play. Now, since we're bringing in an array of them, we're going to have multiple ones. And so this for each is going to go through each one of them. So it'll go through the first fireworks, and then it'll go through the second fireworks, and then it'll go through the third fireworks. It's referring to it, well, they're game objects, and we're given a name of Go for each time. So each time through, Go is going to be given a different instance to work with. And then in firework systems refers to our array. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
it
an
does.
array of game objects. This is a single game object. So down here, I'm referring to my single game object. I'm doing a .get component, and I say particle system. You notice over here, if I click fireworks, you notice we got a particle system right here. So this is what we're retrieving. Now, once we retrieve that, then we do a .play. And that just triggers this particle system right here to start playing. So now if I run this, what we're going to find is if we get down to the point where we've collected all of our coins, it'll start playing the fireworks particle system. So let's run this. And time pressure. I forget how many, 60 seconds, I guess. Yeah, I don't see any fireworks going off. That's interesting. But my game's not ending. I did. Maximum time 60. Maybe I need to put 60 in there. Stop that. Let me try it again. Maybe I didn't get through it fast enough. Yeah, that time I definitely got through it fast enough.
I noticed that each of the coins were deleted
from
but the
there,
level timer never did.
but the level timer never
Yeah,
did.
yeah, and if I see, I just click the timer and see how it's still running over on the right hand side.
One
So
second.
maybe
I've
got
got
some.
you and me over it.
Yeah, I've got you and me over it. 1 sec.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me go back. Let me think through my code here. Modified coin. Coin should automatically be attached to these. Has to be because the coins are being removed. Let me check it against the code here. Okay, coin count is less than or equal to 0. Game object timer is equal to game object dot find level timer. Let's see if that's spelled right. Level timer. Level timer. Destroy timer. Okay. Game object fire system is equal to fireworks. Let's make sure that's why I named it tag. Fireworks. That looks good. Let me go up here and just make sure I got all my settings right on that. Okay, so you can test this by press and play. We don't want fireworks to play when win conditions have been satisfied. To disable playback on level startup, select the particle system, play on awake. We did play on awake. Shut that off. Okay. We did our tags on each one. Oh. I don't think I attached it. So how can I screw that up? It's such easy code. It's like 5 lines of code. And now my mouse is gone. My computer's hung up.
Is your computer malfunctioning?
Is your computer malfunctioning? Because I just have a black screen.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see anything.
I can hear you. I just can't see anything.
It's fixed.
It's fixed.
I'm not sure what happened there. Gotta be one of those days. But that's a pretty simple fix not to have actually sent it out to the game. Okay. There they go. See the fireworks exploding. So again, they look better in the game. And I think eventually now they won't stop. There's a looping function that you can set. If I stop that, if I click each fireworks, somewhere there's looping right there. So if you uncheck that, then they will stop. But otherwise, the fireworks will continue forever. Okay, so that's how you can check to see if your game is won. By the way, notice that this is playing here. It doesn't look that great, does it? Part of that is that when you're in design mode, they don't want it to consume a huge part of your memory. So they'll look very blocky right there. Okay, we'll talk about what all that code does. You now complete your first game in Unity. It's time to take it for test run, then build it. We already tested it really, but down over here on the right hand side, there's 3 little lines. And if I click that, there's normal, but there's also a debug. Now if I click debug, and then I run it, and let me get out of that. but you see a little bit more detail in some of these. Though, to be honest, I don't remember what options were there before. It says appearance of some variables and components in the object inspector may change. Typically, you get a more detailed and accurate view of your variables. And you'll also be able to see most private variables. That corresponds to ones with code behind it. Like I still have that debug selected. And if I run this, and if I click my local identifier and file, that isn't very useful. I don't see where debug gives you a whole lot anymore. Now there's also, if I run this, to escape, you see there's a stats option here. And this gives you some information, audio level, graphics. If you're trying to figure out something about your particular machine, I suppose you could look at these and tell about it. It says the stats panel is only useful during play mode. In this mode, it details the critical performance statistics for your game, such as the frame rate, frames per second. It says you diagnose or determine whether any problems may be affecting your game. It doesn't give you any kind of clue on what values are good, except for if your frames per second falls below 20 or 15, it's like your game will appear choppy or laggy. And see how our frames per second here is 79.81.7. It bounces. So if you're getting bad performance, the statistics will help you with that. Besides that, it doesn't really give any kind of measure, so you'd have to Google it to see what those other ones, what are good ranges and so forth if you're having trouble. But in short, if your frames per second is low, it indicates the problem needs attention. It's interesting because it talks about here needs attention. Solution to that problem varies depending on your context, and you'll need to use judgment. For example, your mesh is too complex. You can go into Blender and you can create these beautiful pieces of work that have 5,000 vertices and so forth, but your idea is keep it simple. How can you make it look good in your game, and still have the same effect with as few vertices, as few meshes as possible? It says, are your meshes too complex? Do they have too many vertices? Are your textures too large? You've seen before where you have a huge image and you can resize it down and so it looks about this size, but it's still that big. Are there too many sounds playing? Someday I suppose computers and consoles and all that will have unlimited resources, but for now we have to work with that. Okay, so we're done with our game. We want to create a executable so we can give it to somebody. So if you do a file and see there's build settings right here. Now, if your scene is not there, like if that's gone, how to get rid of that? Remove the selection. So if that's gone there, you can do one or two things. You can click Add Open Scenes, in which it'll add this. Or you can come down to the scenes down here, and you can click and drag this and drop it up here. But either way, you got to do that. Now, this is important that this is the first one here. For example, if I come down here and I, let's see, can I right-click and create a new scene? Yeah, I can. So I create a new scene like that. Let me close this. I double-click this new scene, and I'll go ahead and save that. I'm right here. So when I run my game, I'm in my new scene. Now, if I double-click this one, if I run my game, it's in this scene. So, whichever scene you have loaded is the one that it plays to begin with. That's the beginning one. For your build settings, if I had this other one in here too, the order is what matters. The fact that this is my first scene here, it's scene 0, means that's the one that plays. Does that make sense? Okay. So just whichever the first one is here is your beginning one that starts. Now I'm going to delete this because we don't have two scenes. I want PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. You see you can build it for your Android phone, but they indicate that the Android phone has a lot of other things you have to consider. So it's not as easy as just taking a Windows game and throwing it into a phone. Because do you even have a mouse on a phone?
No.
No. So you don't have your W, your A, your S, and D, and so forth. So you, I am curious about the Facebook though. I want to play with that and see what that entails. But we want PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. Specifically, your target platform over here, you want to will have Windows. And architecture, mine came up default as this 64, and that's fine. Let's see, what are the settings? I know we want to go to player settings, but let's see if there's anything else there. It changes a little bit. Used to be a switch platform, so you could switch platforms down here, but don't see that option here anymore. So they took that out with one of the versions. But we won't go to player settings. If I click player settings, it doesn't appear like it did anything, but the player settings are over here. And actually, I want to make sure that this is back to normal. So I'm going to choose normal on that. Did you notice that we had a ton more player settings in the debug? Yeah. So a lot more things you can look at, examine, try to figure out what's going wrong. And we want to what do we want to set? Okay, we want to give our company name up here. Your product name. David's Coin Game. Version number if you want. Down here in the full screen mode, if you do the drop down, you see there's a full screen window, and that's one we want. There's exclusive full screen, maximize window, windowed, but we want it full screen with window. They say to put in display resolution dialog as enabled. Mine's already enabled, but if yours isn't, then choose enabled. They say normally you wouldn't want to do that, but that's handy to figure out what's going wrong with your code. At that point, we're ready to build and run. Actually, just build, I guess. So I click the build here. It asks you where you want to put it at. And I'm going to go to my documents here, and I'm going to create a new folder. My new game. And this is where I'm going to put it at. So it should say your whatever folder you're putting it in down here. And I'll click select folder. Now it'll take a little bit to build here. I don't know why it doesn't pop up saying starting. But there it goes. It should pop up in with the folder that you just created, and this is what you'd want to zip up and send to somebody. Now you probably have to have some other items installed on the PC. I'm not even sure if I have a PC where I could test this on. But oftentimes when you do anything in Visual Studio, you have to have those libraries loaded for Visual Studio. I'm trying to think what they're called. Here they are. Yeah, maybe that's not it. But there are libraries that you can install on those. Let's see what they're called. The .NET framework. It might not need it. I'm hoping that it wouldn't need it, but again, I really have no way to check that because I think every computer I have has Visual Studio on it. I guess I got some. Actually, I bought some at an auction sitting here that I could test it on. I'm not sure if they're 64-bit. I'll have to rebuild it, but if I run this now. This is a window that pops up asking you about your screen resolution to begin with. And this is why it says eventually you'd want to shut that off because if you're running a game, you don't want this to pop up. It'll confuse people. Now I'll click play. Not sure what this will do on your side. But you see our game. Can you see that all right, Kyle?
You keep cutting in and out.
You keep cutting in and out. I'm trying to figure out what's wrong.
Nothing's wrong. I won't show that very much. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It just keeps cutting in.
Yeah, I can hear you now. It just
Is it
keeps
still
cutting
cutting
in and out.
or just when I ran the game?
Not doing it anymore. I don't know.
Okay.
Not doing it
I
anymore.
bet it was when I
don't
ran
know.
the game because it seemed to take over the entire screen. So I wasn't sure what it would do. But this is it. And you see how this has DLLs here? Those are libraries. So it might not need those Visual Studio libraries, that .NET framework. Here's your game data. That has to be there. But that has various information. So to turn this in, and this is the project that I'll have you do, is you need to zip up this folder. Now you go back one. You don't want to be in here where your exe is. You go back one. You find the folder you just created, and you right-click on it, and you choose Send to Compress Folder. There it is. Send to Compress Zip Folder. And then press Enter. And this is what you'll upload. And I'll just close that. Now, what I want you to do is for the assignment is I want you to modify this, add more coins, add more objects on there. If you want to put some more materials on there, that'd be fantastic. Like if you want to put a material on the wall or something like that. Remember, you just down here, I put it under a materials folder. You just right-click, create, and then somewhere's material, and you create a new material. It should be playable. It should be such that you can actually finish it in the amount of time that you have allotted for the game. But that's the next assignment that'll be due. Is there any questions on that?
No, not yet.
Okay.
No, not yet.
I'll save that, and I'm going to bring up another bit of code. So an open project. And this is nothing fancy. It was just kind of a proof of concept for the 2D game development class. And this will be where we're headed to understand more about prefabs. And it's a strange game, so don't try to understand too much about it. Like I say, it was just to understand prefabs. You got all these pizzas going across the screen, and I'm using my left arrow, right arrow, up arrow to go here. Now each one that I touch disappears. And I don't think I have an end of game on this. Maybe I do. No, I don't have an end of game. I don't even think I have a collision on that. No. Where we're headed with this is if you wanted to create a 3D Space Invaders game. Now, if you've never seen a Space Invaders,
I'm pretty sure I've seen it.
Yeah, most
I'm pretty
people
sure
have.
I've
It's
seen
just
it.
like one of the original ones. That one might be. Let's try here. Characters go across the screen, and they reach the far side. They turn around, and they move down a little bit, and then go back the other way. And they hit the side of the screen, they go down a little bit, then go back the other way, and then as you shoot them, they disappear. So that's what we're going to take a look at to do in 3 dimensions, using the same concept as we did in this pizza game here. Now, first let's talk about some items in here. We have the pizza, the pepperoni pizza right here. And that's what was going across the screen, was pepperoni pizza. And we got this script right here for instantiation. And then we got our game object here. Okay. So this game object here, this is an empty. So just like before, we want something on the screen that we can run constantly. I got a script associated with it. The script is called the instantiation script. That's where you create an instance. That's what the instantiation refers to. Now you can call it whatever you want. So I just called it that. And the name of the prefab here is Sphere. And that goes along with our pepperoni pizza here. I created a prefab of it called Sphere. And so I dragged the sphere and dropped it up here. So let's take a look at this code. I'll double click that. And this is just your standard code up here, so there's nothing new there. I created a game object, and the game object is pretty vague because it can be anything. And I gave it a name. This would be just name a prefab. I created another game object. This time, this is an array of them. So many of them. And I called this all.gs. Down here, don't worry about the direction. We'll talk about that probably next time. I got my start. And I'm looping through. I got for y is equal to 0, y is less than 5. Increasing it by 1, so it's going from 0 to 4, so there's 4 of them. And, no, 5. Can't add. And this one is 0 and then less than 10, so 0 to 9, and there's 9 of these. So I got 4 and I got 9. That's going to give me 36 instances. So when I run this, I should see 36 instances. Specifically, or 5. 5. See how there's 5 rows? And there's 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns. Get my numbers right eventually. So that's what this is creating. 5 rows and 10 columns. And I do an instantiate here. Now what this does is that creates a new instance. And it's taking my prefab, and I'm passing that in. Up here I say it's public game object, name of prefab. And then over in the script, maybe I'm lying. In the game object. This game object is where I can drop it. See how I got the name of the prefab here is Sphere? The benefit of not hard coding that was that I could take any object, assuming it's a prefab, and drag and drop it up here. Now you notice that the prefab is kind of grayish area. This Mario here, in theory, I could sit there and drag Mario up here and have it work. Well, let's try that. This part of the code won't work when we do that because of the way I programmed it, but I think it'll still run. See how we have a bunch of Marios? They're not moving anymore. But you can take any prefab and drag and drop it up here. So I put Sphere back, and they should be moving. Okay. This new vector 3, xy, this is assigning a different position for every one of the instances. And is based upon the x and y changing. And then this is just our standard transform.rotation. And you shouldn't have changed that at all. And that creates an instance of it. This, by the way, goes against your default. So when we're talking about this right here, I didn't want anything rotated. I wanted them all facing the same direction. So does that make sense on how to create a different instances?
Yes.
Okay. Now we're going to look at this other code another time. But let's go see how I've changed one of the coin games to have these instances in here. And then we're going to go and create a new object in Blender, and we're going to try to create our own series of aliens. Okay, so I'm going to open, let's see, open project. And let's see. I think we were just looking at this one, so coin game. It's amazing how easy it is to do some of these items in here. Sometimes it's a little hard to find out what the code should be. Like I'm still working on changing part of that code. I dropped a cube on here. Now after I dropped the cube on here, I then dragged the cube down here and made a prefab. Because it doesn't work unless it's a prefab. I created a blank game object right here, and I created that same script where I did the name of the prefab as cube. Now, if I were to look at that script, here's my instantiation script. I just edit, copy, and edit, pasted the other one, but then I made some changes. It's still a single game object. We call it name of prefab, and I make it public. That's what allows you to change it over there. We have our array of game objects, and I called that all the game objects, all GS. Don't worry about direction. We'll handle that later. I had to change this because in terms of your 2 dimensions, you're dealing with X and Y. And in terms of 3 dimensions, if Y is up and down, the only thing we're concerned about is the X and Z. That's here because Y is up and down. So I created a new instance, instantiate, and the name of the prefab. Again, that's passed in over here in our game object. That's passed in right here. The new vector. Now X and Z are going to these values. Let's look at X first. X is going from 0 to 9, so that's 10 of them total. Well, if I didn't do this times, I thought they'd be too close together. So I put a 5 there with an F. 5 F means you take a 5, it's a double, and you're casting it, you're changing it to a float. So 0 times 5 is 0. If X is 1, 1 times 5 is 5, 2 times 5 is 10, and so forth. So the cubes will be further apart. Now, here I just hard-coded where the Y position was going to be. And then this right here, I did the same thing with the Z in terms of that. And then I just left transform and rotation alone. So that'll be our code. Now if I run this, notice I just have 1 cube on here. If I run that, I should have 45 45 cubes on there. I think five rows and then 10 for each row. The idea behind this would be that if those were different objects, they would be going back and forth, and I'd be firing at them to kill the Space Invaders. Now you can control this in a lot of different ways. I've hard-coded in the number of rows and number of columns. I could up here have public int rows and public int columns. And so now, instead of hard-coding this, I could put rows here, and I could put columns here. Now if I attach that to Unity, oops, it'll break. I'll get an error. Okay. Yeah, it didn't give me an error. That's interesting. But I had, because this is 0 by default. So I need to put how many rows I want here. So if I want 10 rows, I put that there. If I want 100 columns, that means I'm going to have a total of 1,000 cubes on my screen. So if I run that, hopefully it doesn't crash the computer. As far as I can see, there's cubes. This shows you the power of prefabs. You know, our little coin example really didn't demonstrate the power of it. You know, if I'm trying to create some kind of not something's going to move, we're going to eventually move these. But if I'm trying to create some kind of special effect, you know, like pillars or oops, let's try that again. There. If I'm trying to create pillars going across, you know, of 10 of them by 4, I could create that. Pylons, that's what I'm thinking about. Pylons in water. You know, I can very easily do that with this. Okay, now we're going to go create our own Blender file, like I said, and we're going to replace this cube. So, because there's nothing special about this cube. The way we got it set up is if I go to my empty object, all I do is I drag, there it is, name of prefab. So you'll drag whatever you have onto there. Now I am working on some more code here. In theory, I had to worry about a Z component that my other one didn't have. It just had X and Y. But with 3D, we have X, Y, and Z. I've taken the same bit of code and I've pasted it in here, and it's finding all the game objects with cube, but my move isn't working. So that part I had to play with a little bit more. Obviously, there's something about 2-dimensional that going to 3-dimensional that I need to consider. Is there any questions on those? I guess 3 lines of code, because really these aren't necessary. It's necessary. I close off the start. You good on those? What those 3 do?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, to create your own is pretty easy. You just have to, You just have to have this, this declaration up here, like I have, and you just have those 3 lines of code then. Okay, so let's go over to Blender and create something a little bit more interesting. And I'm going to delete that. And I want to drop on a, what do I want to drop on? What I'm really wondering if some of these other ones would work. But, okay, well, I'll drop on a cylinder. And I'm going to increase the size of it. So I'm going to do S, and what's up? SZ. Make it a little bit taller there. And I'm going to edit. I'm going to select the face. So I got my face select. I'm going to select this one up here, and I'll do a W for subdivide. Well, can't tell if it created more vertices or not. No, it's not subdividing that.
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, I'm watching
It
your
is.
vert count go up, but it's
Yeah, I'm watching your vert count go
That's
up,
weird.
but it's not showing.
It may be because it's a circle. I've had issues with
It
that.
may be because
have
it's
you?
a circle. I've had issues with that.
Okay, well, I'm going to approach it from a different way then. Let me just do a Control Z to get back to here, I guess. And strange. Okay, so I got my face select. I'll select this. I'll do E for extrude. Move it up a little bit. I'll do an S for scale. Bring it in. So there's like my neck. I'll do another E for extrude. Take it up a little bit. Click. Do my S for extrude. And then I'll do E for extrude. Take it up. This is my head. And I'm clicking to stop the extrude from when I'm going up. Now I'll do another E for extrude, and then I'll click. And now I'll do an S for scale, bring that in. Do an E for extrude. And you can see I have no imagination. Okay. So there's our head, as much as I'm going to get on it. And then I want to go back here. And I'm going to drop on some UV spheres as the eyes.
That almost looked like a drill bit from
That almost looked like a drill bit from
really?
Bobcat.
Yeah, they've got a simulation now. Then
Yeah, they've got a simulation now. Then it looks about like that.
That's interesting. So maybe I'm ahead of my times, talent-wise, huh? Okay, that's probably good enough. Now I'm going to do a Shift D to duplicate that, I think. Yeah, Shift D. Put it over here. When I did a freeform moving it, I think I probably have the eyeball outside. Not that it matters. No, it's about the same, isn't it? Okay, that's good enough. I need some arms. By the way, these aren't currently attached, and they don't have to be. But if we want to parent them, we select, and I always get this wrong in the order. I should have played with this earlier so I can make sure I have it down. But I select one, I select the other one, and it's Shift P, I think. P for parent? No. Well, we don't have to parent them. But now I'm gonna put some arms on there. So maybe I'll do another UV sphere. Yeah, I don't want a UV sphere. Part of it is you're trying to create that same effect without creating a bunch of vertices. UV sphere has a lot of vertices. So if I'm going to take this and I'm going to have 50 of them on my screen, my goal is to minimize the number of vertices. Okay, so I'm going to drop on another cylinder, I guess. Cylinder has less. I'll do an R for rotate. I do an S for scale. Maybe I don't want to do rotate yet. Let me do a Control Z. I'm going to do an S for scale. I don't want that. I want to scale about which axis? The blue. Blue is Z, so I'll do SZ. No. SX. No. SY. Actually, I did want SX too. SX. That didn't look too bad. And then I'm going to do a scale along the Z. This is going to be my arm and my leg. So I'm going to duplicate it. Shift D. Shift D. Shift D. Grab this, I'll rotate it. Move it into the body. I'll look at that here in a second. Rotate this. Now, again, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time for symmetry and all that. G for grab, because I couldn't get it look good anyway. Art's not my talent. G, put it down there. G, put it down there. More or less. Grab this one, do a G there. Grab this one, do a G. And my legs now. G. G. Now, how you can get more precision on this is like this right here. If I look at its position, if I do an in, I can see where it's at in relation to the different letters. And X is my red, so that's at negative 0.03. So this one here, the X, negative 0.03. This is coming down. Let me think. Up and down is my Z, so that's negative 2.8. So this one would be negative 2.8. So by doing that, assuming they're the same size, you can get precision on that. Now I'm going to do a Shift D for duplicating that, and I'll move it down to right here. Do an R for rotate. And what's my rotation? Negative 87. Probably negative 90 would be a perfect flat. Do the S red. What's red? Boy, my eyes are bad. SX. There. Move that here, move it up. And we now have a foot. I'm going to duplicate that, so I do Shift D. Move it over here. Again, if I look at this location here, see my up and down is my Z here, so that's negative 4.04, more or less. Negative 4.04. If I look to the side, I can handle that, even though they're probably not perfect. Okay, so now we have our character. And probably should put some kind of face on it, besides the eyes. Put a cube. Do an S. Never very good about thinking about these. SX. Let's try SX. Yeah, that'll work. SZ. That'll work. Trying to create a mouth. What's the other one I haven't done? SY. Red. Red is SX. SX. So I'll move that. Okay, that's not bad. You said normally mean that's horrible. Yeah, obviously I'm not good at art. Okay, so I'm gonna save this, and let me see, save it on my desktop, I guess, so I can easily find it. I'll call it My Creation, and say Save Blender File. Go over to Unity. Remember, we just simply do a right click here, and where's import? Import new asset. And I'll go to my my desktop. And you go to My Creation. Take a few minutes to copy. It's copying that Blender file to that folder. And now if I drag and drop this is a prefab, or is that a prefab already? It's got the gray around it, doesn't it? Maybe it is a prefab already. See, I drop it on there. It's too low, I guess. Like that. I got my character. Now for my game object here, I got my cube. So if it is a prefab, I should be able to just drag and drop it here. And that's My Creation. And I want 3 rows of 5 of them, so 15 of them. And then I'll run it. As soon as that bar goes away, there it goes. Now that's bizarre. But that's how you can create your own 3D space movement. Actually, I kind of like that effect. But again, to get that to not do that, one of two ways. When I create the instance in my code, since I know what I'm dealing with, that, of course, that's the idea in this is you generically don't. I can adjust this Y position right here. So instead of 0.5, let me think, I want it up, so 1. Now I could sit there probably all day long and play with that to try to get it right. Or I could come up here and I could create a variable, the Y position. And then, not int though, it should be a float. And then this, instead of hard coding 1, I'm going to put Y position. I'll attach that to Unity. I don't think they're up higher. Oh, I know why. Surprised they weren't down lower. Let me put it as a 1. See, this way I don't have to keep bringing it in from the code. I can just set that. I think they're higher. Let me change that to... You can actually change it, I think, on the fly here. Maybe. Okay, I'm lying to you. I guess you have to create a new instance. No, I don't think it's changing it, is it?
Oh, it reset when you hit play.
It reset when you hit play.
So shut that off. I think I may have changed this up here. Well, I don't know. Let's change that to 3. Okay. That's 3. Okay, so they're up more. Not enough, are they?
Not quite.
Not quite. And
not quite.
I could actually delete this this object here now. Which one is that? My creation. We don't need that on there because I've I don't think. Let me check. Yeah. Now, I think what I can do. This is we're about out. We're out of time, but I'll try one last thing. Is I could even make this a rigid. Attach a rigid body to this. See if that's a true statement. Maybe I can't. Rig model. Maybe you can only do it to the individual objects. Huh, I'll have to play with that. But if they're a rigid body, then they'd be subject to gravity. And I wouldn't have to keep worrying about pushing them up. So now if I go over here and look at these, they're actually pretty big. So I might want to scale it down. But anyway, those are 3D Space Invaders. They're just not moving yet. Is there any questions on that? Well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording on that.